a chat with Quantum, and he is of the belief that about 80% of people have not voted yet, in combination with a lot of people don't even know the polls are open.
Definitely at this time. Later in the day, different story, but in the mornings, I would say that's definitely the case.
Yeah, there's no judge of justice around.
That's why, right?
Yeah, it's kind of I think unfortunate. I mean, I was telling him this. I'm like, this is the most important thing that the DOJ has in their hands every 3 months, and this is the second term where they kind of threw. Yeah, it was big bad time. Last time. This time it's non-existent. I even called a justice about it, and I don't think they ended up tweeting out. You know, or not tweeting out, but state announcing.
You know, this is their opportunity to kind of be the ringleader. You know what I mean? Where they can rally up the city and bring everyone together for something special. This is their event. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
And I don't know. To me, what I'm seeing is basically affirmation that they're not interested, which is, you know, weird.
Yeah, true. Oh my God. It always puts me back into. They spend a lot of energy fighting us, but not putting a lot of energy into building their fucking shit up.
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, look at the state of lawyers. Look at the state of judges. Look at the state of the judiciary. Look at how many cases on the docket don't get seen for 6 months. I mean, they got, what, 4 or 5 justices at any given time, and all they can manage to do is obstruct. And then it's basically you and I.
Yet they want to be the mayor's office at the same time. It's
can't even do.
It's so you know, I always wonder, like, you know, it makes you wonder, like, I think a lot of people don't like getting called out for their bullshit. They just want their title and just fucking exist, right? And I think we've done a good job of saying, no, that's not enough. You've taken this on. Do your fucking job, right? You owe people this.
Well, I think we've kind of led by example, right? We've fought and preserved and expanded the rights of people, but we also ran a county and ran funding programs, right? Yeah. And we don't have any more or less people than the DOJ. We just give a shit. That's the only difference.
Yeah, it's yeah, not wrong. Okay, I'm gonna bring up the priority list to keep myself in check too.
Yeah.
Yo, Corvette case 32 months. Shit. Yes, votes. We need to get our people to focus on voting till Saturday. I think.
Oh, that reminds me. I linked up with Helios. He was showing me his cafe, and Finley Schmidt was there. She's back in town. She wanted to know if she could help.
I think that's a really good idea. We have about less than 72 hours, about 48 of voting, right?
Yeah. Saturday at 8 p.m.
Okay, so let's say 60 hours or something.
Yeah.
Oh, no. What am I saying? Yeah, about 60 hours. That's good. I think we got to get out there because my concern is when there's not a lot of turnout, that hits us more than it does Potty, right?
Yeah. So yeah, and that's I think that's kind of what Junior and I have both been doing, because it's really just been us, but it's we've both been kind of engaging as many people as we can. I
think we got to drive to the polls. Twada doesn't do anything.
Well, that's what I've been doing.
Oh, you have? Oh, shit.
And I think Junior has been as well. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay. Like, what are you looking at? Like spitball numbers.
How many people
Yeah.
I've probably done about 25 or 30 trips with anywhere from 2 to 4 people in the
Jesus. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh shit. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's really good.
Honestly, I just hang out in the food court. All right, I'll work at People's Meat, and then I'll ask a group of people if they voted, and if they say no, I'll offer to give them a ride.
Okay. All right, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Penal code rollback and reform.
This one I have
yeah.
a lot to say about, so I don't know if you want to dive into it now or.
I think before that we need the better verbiage. Get that out of the way.
Better verbiage for? Do you mean the bills?
No, the strike DOJ's penal code edit powers.
Oh, yeah.
I think we get that done today. At least the writing of it. I mean, let's do it right now.
That's easy. I was waiting for the governor to respond to those, right?
Wait. The governor doesn't. He already responded.
Did he to those 2 audits specifically? Judicial powers.
No.
And the bank accounts one.
No, he said that you guys should decide on what the verbiage is or whatever.
Oh, let me look at it again. I may have just misremembered.
He writes, you are free to write pieces based on this, that you feel more emphasize your needs to understand this as people. I'd suggest getting input from all authorities before sending it for review. So,
right, I forgot.
I think we just need to write that line extremely explicitly. The DOJ, I mean, let's cook it right now.
I'm going to pull up the legislation. Hold on. So you don't have to jump around in documents. I'm just going to drop that entire legislation at the bottom of the priority list, and then I'll move it to a different document, okay?
Okay, yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's at the bottom. And then the clause is highlighted in yellow.
Wait, where did you put this?
I dropped it at the bottom of the priority list. So if you scroll down to page 7, Justice Authority, you'll see modification of the Penal Code.
Okay, so it says the Penal Code is a section of the MDT that contains all state and county laws. The justices are responsible for maintaining these laws and may change them as necessary. That entire line should be the justices will be the mechanism for maintaining these laws. That entire line needs to... The justices will be the mechanism by which alterations will be made. Remove, they may modify this at will. We just need to reword that completely. Like, the whole thing was good. Let's go back to what it originally was, and then let's bullet point under it what we need to emphasize, and then we'll do the rewrite.
Hold on. So what it originally was a different piece of legislation entirely.
I'm sorry?
What it you want to I get what you mean.
Yeah, let's bullet point under modification of penal code, and just what we can do is it's better for us to point out like what is it that's missing from this that, you know, caused issues. So, like, for example, DOJ is the mechanism. And penal code changes are only modified by the DOJ to reflect legislation, something along those lines, right?
It's got to be legislation, including case and civil law. If we're going by what the governor said, right? The governor said they can make changes to the penal code, but they need case law to back it up, right?
Which is legislation.
Well, kind of.
Per his definition. I mean,
yeah, well, that's
case law, because case law needs to go into a piece of legislation.
It does, yeah.
Yeah.
However, I'm going to play devil's advocate and say that it warrants separating case and common law from just a blanket legislation term, because if we leave it like that, they're going to think that they can just legislate again.
I want to like hearing shit like this, you're not wrong, and I want to burn the fucking thing down. It's like, we got to fucking write this shit like fucking entire page of like, we have to like effectively pull all the documents and put it into this fucking definition.
Yeah, I know.
If this was software, you know, I don't know if you've ever written software before, but sometimes you have to like, you include other packages at the top of the document, right? Like, what is a string? What is a socket? What is this? What is that? And then you just reference it. This feels like we have to like extract everything in those packages into the single document each time.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
You know what I'm going to do? If you don't mind, I think this may be helpful. So in the Legislative Proposal and Approval Process Act, I actually outlined the process for amending the penal code. I'm going to drop that here so you can at least look at it at the same time, because that might help us come up with verbiage.
I want to start by highlighting, still go down this exercise of like highlighting what this should be clearly stating. It hurts me that we have to do this. Like, it actually like, does that cover everything? The penal code changes are made, can only be made, will only be made to reflect existing legislation. Okay, so now we got to play fucking dumb fuck simulator. What if legislation exists and they manufacture something magically out of it? Do you understand what I'm saying?
So legislation already exists, right?
Yeah, like, Constitution is here. Let me just add a penal code charge without legislation backing it, because I can derive without.
So I'm going to give you my honest opinion, right? A lot of legislation was enacted by the state outside of the intended process, being case or common law, right?
Recently?
In my opinion, no, I just mean in general, right? There was that period of uncontested authority where the DOJ was allowed to make a foundation,
yes,
right? Which is understood, right? But the last time we spoke to the governor, this is back in December, he said that was not meant to be
October.
Permanent. That was it October?
Yeah.
Oh my fucking God. Either way, right? He made it clear that was not permanent. That was meant to be after blah, 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 blah. And it doesn't exist anymore. I would argue
October,
that
man.
Despite the DOJ being the authors of that, it is not case law or common law, it is state law. And the only defined power regarding state law is joint signature by the mayors, right? So my argument would be the only way that penal code changes can be made as a result of state law would be if both mayors agree. And if only one agrees, I guess they would have to make a county level piece of legislation. But I don't envision a world where all that state legislation that was drafted by the DOJ that isn't case or common law still is theirs. That doesn't make sense. In fact, I would argue if that was the case, it would be incompatible with the jurisdictions.
I need you to say that all again. I'm going to be honest.
Let me see if I can give you an example. Well, actually, I can give you a great example. The DEN Act. Let's go with that, right?
Okay.
The DEN Act was a result of a justice making an arbitrary decision one day, and they enacted legislation for that, right? That did not follow a meaningful process, and that was not a outcome of a judicial proceeding, right? We can both agree that the DEN Act is not case or common law, right? I'm assuming silence means yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. If it's not case or common law, and it was enacted by the DOJ outside of the legislative process, but it is still legislation. It does exist, right? It is valid legislation in today's day and age. I would argue that the Department of Justice is not the authority over that piece of legislation. I would argue that it is state legislation, and as such, the mayors would be the only ones who are authorized to draft in a penal code amendment as a result of that.
I agree.
Now, the way to do that in this new system that we're proposing, right? Because all that legislation effectively has to be...
Can I feel like we're drifting into something beyond modification of the penal code. This is what you're saying is important, but I'm losing the connection to this power of modifying the penal code.
We're getting there.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
So all the existing legislation, right? Mm-hmm. Your plan for it is that we're going to introduce bills that say we take these 6 pieces of legislation, we merge them, or we group them all together into one, and they go into a new singular piece of legislation, right? That is the plan. And as part of the legislative process changes, when a bill is introduced, we have to put forward penal code changes in the introduction of the bill. So I think the way to do it would be that, right?
Not in the introduction, but somewhere in the body. Yes.
Right. No. By introducing a bill into the legislative process, not in the introduction. No.
I got you. Yeah.
So I think that's the way to do it. And I think that the mayors jointly need to take the existing state legislation and put it through the new legislative process where it's a bill and we move the existing legislation into a new piece of legislation, including penal code charges.
I agree.
So the way to do it is to outline which authorities have the ability to put forward a penal code change to the DOJ to put in the MDT. It's how do you dumb that down into 1 or 2 clauses that won't be misconstrued.
I feel like this modification of the penal code really just needs to very clearly underline that the penal code may only be made to reflect updated, like, I guess, wait, I want to make sure I don't lose your thought here. I don't see between what you just said and what we're doing here, what's the connection there?
I mean, why don't we say that penal code changes can only be made through or as a byproduct of the passing of a bill or case or common law?
Because we don't know how long it's going to take for the bill stuff to happen. Could be 3 months.
It could be. Yeah.
Why go that deep? Like, I guess I'm missing. Oh, okay. I agree with what you're saying, but the thing is, it's got a lot more impediments that we could be hitting. Like while what you're saying makes sense, the reality is getting bills and stuff in place is going to take super long. I feel like the only thing that we have to do in this definition is make it very clear that the penal code only changes as a consequence of new legislation going in, right?
Well, and I mean, you simply. This is where it gets challenging because the penal code is legislation, right?
Yeah.
The governor said as much. He confirmed, yes, the penal code is law and therefore it's legislation. So it should be as simple as changes to the penal code must follow the legislative process. But you and I both know that we can't be that general.
Yeah. And then we exclude it, and then we explicitly state what that is.
Yeah.
I think that's what we got to limit it to. I mean, at the end of the day, the main problem lines are they may modify this at will. So, these guys are so trash, I swear to God. It's so fucking annoying every time I read this, because all it tells me is that you can't trust a single word coming out of their mouth. It pisses me off every time I go back to this wording and I remember why we put it in there and what we agreed on. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think the foundational issue, like how we got to where we are right now, is largely because the penal code was left up to judicial discretion. And I think that's a problem, right? I think if the charges themselves, right, the amendments to the penal code, let's say, were put forward in the legislation itself, and it was just a matter of them copying out of the legislation and pasting it into the penal code, we'd be in a better spot. But our system up until today effectively was the DOJ looks at the legislation and makes something up based off their interpretation. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, agreed. So, DOJ is a mechanism. Penal code changes can only be made by reflective legislation. Changes of penal code must follow the legislative process. Okay. Is there I think underneath this we write the new definition out.
New definition of
the modification of penal code. It's so fucking annoying. I know I keep going to this, but man, it's so frustrating having to write this out because effectively I'm like, how do we child-proof this? You know what I mean?
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Chad, it's so painful reading the definition, reading this out and just being like,
I mean, it's
the fact that we even have to do this is crazy.
The MDT that contains all state and county laws. The section of the MDT that contains charges related to state and county laws. Even then, that's not true. Most of those charges don't have legislative backing to begin with, but it's I mean, the existing definition is a definition made by people who don't understand the system, let's say.
Oh, that's true. I think you're right. That it doesn't even have to do with the writing. It has to do with the fact that I don't think they pay attention to what's written.
Yep.
Acting as the mechanism. And shall be responsible for the adding, removing, modifying of words, fines, times, etc. Like pretty much all the shit. And then we should scope that to this can only wait, change it. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Outline. Go ahead. What you were saying.
Changes to the penal code may only result from updates to legislation through the legislative process.
Yep.
And then case law, common law, I think in the updates to legislation, you know, so you see where you put like common law, case law. Let's go put that in there. Like, so only results from updates to legislation, and then in parentheses, common law, case law, etc. I think penal code changes, I agree, need to be scoped to a bill. Penal code changes should always be scoped to a bill. That's husband. No. I think you're very much overcooking right now.
In what way?
You think we have to write all that out? I guess you're right.
I mean, I have this already defined in the legislative proposal and approval process. So it should be enough that we say as a result, or sorry, through the legislative proposal and approval process, and everything after including can get removed because they have to follow that law, right? Assuming we get that amendment to the legislative proposal and approval process passed. So this, I don't want to say this is cart before the horse, but it kind of is.
It is. We can't do that. Yeah. I know that in your mind you probably think it makes sense, and I agree that it makes sense, but I also recognize we have to use history, right? It took 3 months for the last one. Right now, we just need this definition very clear that only new legislation that explicitly requires, actually, it should be new legislation that explicitly requires updated penal code changes, right? So that they cannot backtrack and be like, well, the Constitution says this. Let's add a penal code change without the legislative process. You know? Oh, man.
Okay. Let me think about the workflow on this, though. So let's say we're changing the penal code, but we're using the existing system that we have right now, right?
Correct. We have to. Yeah.
We pass a new piece of legislation. Let's say it's about something that doesn't have a charge currently. That charge would have to be scoped in that legislation.
Correct.
If we want to change an existing charge in the penal code, we would have to introduce a piece of legislation specifically for the purpose of changing existing charges.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that's how it should work. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing stopping someone from introducing anything. Nothing stops anyone from, let's say first degree murder is that you put something up for first degree murder. You know what I mean? Changing.
Yeah.
Like, you don't even need, and that would be the legislation. It would just be first degree.
My mind immediately goes to, how can I over-explain this so people understand? Because I'm gonna envision a future where they go, well, you proposed that penal code change through an amendment to an existing piece of legislation, and that's not new legislation. But an amendment is new legislation.
Okay, so changes to the penal code may only result from new or updated, you know what I mean? Or updated.
We shouldn't need to do that, right? You shouldn't need to do that because an amendment to an existing piece of legislation is new legislation.
You have to remember there's a level of regardness, you know?
Kill me.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Okay, I actually think that's pretty good, to be honest.
The penal code section of the MDT that contains offenses and charges related to all state and county law. The justices act as the administrative mechanism and shall be responsible for procedural changes, including adding, removing, or modifying words, fines, and times of changes to the penal code. Changes to the penal code may only result from new or updated legislation that has followed the legislative. So changes to the penal code may only result from new or updated legislation where penal code changes are explicitly required. Let's split that.
We need the second part.
No. Have that second part, but put it into its own sentence.
That has followed. No, that has followed the legislative proposal and approval process. You think we need that?
Yeah. Like, I remember these. Like, we're literally dealing with dumb fucks, right? That do not have. They do not remember, acknowledge existing legislation, and therefore we need to baby feed them on this. And I know it's shitty, but it's just why we're here in the first place, right?
You know,
and they still have this. They just have this ability. Yeah.
That last sentence effectively says you must follow the law.
Yes, so which they haven't been.
I know, and the fact that we have to include it just Kills me inside,
I know
honestly.
it does for me too. I just kind of want to get it done. You know what I mean? It's shitty. It's unfortunate. It's bad faith. Honestly, it should be a consequence of termination. But what are you gonna do? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The people need to follow the law, but for some reason the justices believe that they're above it. It is what it is.
I don't know. I think that's pretty good.
Send a copy of that to Princess if you could, and
I'm gonna remove our little bulleted point. DOJ is the mechanism, penal code. Blah, blah, blah.
Send her to that section and say, is there anything in here that you believe is missing? And I honestly don't mind if this is like longer. You know what I mean? I know you're probably very similar. Let's drive around. You're probably very similar to me in that this seems like overkill and like whatever. And I'm in the same mindset that we shouldn't, that everything in here should be scoped to existing legislation. But the reality is that these guys are abusing their powers, right?
Yeah, yeah.
And this is a means by which to stop them from doing it, making it easy for us to go after them if they do it again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's what it is. So don't sound on the priority list, but just that blurb, and be like, do we believe this covers everything? If a 10-year-old read it.
Okay, so.
Okay, so, all right, so next up, this bill thing. So, actually, next up, I want to do, let me look at the priority list.
You think for a second I got to be in my head.
Yep.
Okay, where are we at?
I want to add another point here is that we need another tag. This is we need to fix all this shit. San Andreas DOJ legislation needs to be turned into state legislation. The DOJ is not the state. I think we need to break the chains completely. Add that to the list. I hate that has been a tag from the beginning. Let's fix it. There should just be state legislation. This multi-tag shit is fucking brain dead.
Do you think we would need tags for case in common law, or should case in common law should just be state law?
No. Case law is it's DOJ.
Oh, so, okay, so case law becomes DOJ legislation.
I mean that we could argue either way, But it's this whole like synonymity of San Andreas DOJ legislation being inherently state legislation is brain dead.
Yeah.
It's incoherent to anyone that looks at it. It needs to make sense, right? And trying to say it's synonymous is like, you have to like derive the why. As a reader, as a civilian, as someone reading it, it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Even for us, it doesn't make sense. You'd have to like
misconstrues their authority effectively.
Correct.
Yeah, I agree completely.
It's frustrating how much work we have to put into this just for people to survive and just for these fucking lazy fucks to get off their ass, because that's what it all is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, read your fucking laws, bitch.
You know what?
You ever wonder about that? Like, how is a justice that doesn't know the law? Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of examples of that. I think there was one where McNee said something on the docket, and then he's like, turns out I'm not up to date on this legislation and I made an error. But that update was from like 4 months ago. It does sometimes feel like they threw us the keys and said, we'll fuck with you guys. You just fix it for us. Well,
you know what I mean?
Good analogy for you, right? The other day, someone asked me what it was like working with the DOJ, and I said it's kind of like playing chess with a pigeon. They kind of fly in, they throw the piece around, and then shit all over the chessboard, and then they fly away acting like they won.
And the only people that pay is everybody.
Yep. To your point, though, right? You say it's such a pain in the ass, blah, blah, blah. And you're right. Don't get me wrong. But a lot of people are really, really passionate
Speak up.
about a lot of people are really, really passionate about getting this fixed. To the point that, you know Andre, right? Andre sends me like a 8-page document.
Yeah.
And the last 2 weeks, he's been going out and talking to basically every gang to kind of see how they're feeling, how the penal code changes have affected them, blah, blah, blah. And he hands this thing to me yesterday. So you as much of a pain in the ass as it is, people really, really want to contribute to making this place better. You know what I mean?
I agree with that. But the problem is it all falls back on when you have a entity just uninterested. You know 100%. What I mean? And show me they're not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Show me they're not. Engage with us. Engage with 100%. The community. Engage with conversation. Right?
Yeah. No, and that's exactly
Tell us you're interested in more than just the title. You know? That's what people are demanding.
You got gang leaders showing more interest and passion in this than the Department of Justice. That's my point, right? It's crazy. Yeah.
Well, you know, the worst thing about it is most of their affluence or most of their like support comes from false promises made to law enforcement.
Yeah.
Right? Hey, we're breaking the law so you can enforce the law. Like, hello?
Yeah.